Introduction to John Paul II's Trinitarian Trilogy. The first part ends with the question, is the new theology of Cardinal Wojtyła also the theology of Pope John Paul II? The answer is, the philosophical theological principles of the professor and Archbishop Karol Wojtyła have fully entered into the words and actions of Pope John Paul II. Through the diligent exercise of the office of Peter, he developed them and finally presented their main element before the eyes of all mankind through the public manifestation of the world religion's prayer for peace at Assisi. Therefore, Part 1 forms also the basis for understanding and interpreting the Pope's theology. The most important milestones on John Paul II's journey to the prayer meeting at Assisi are the three dogmatic encyclicals, Redemptor Hominis, 1979, Dives in Misericordia, 1980, and Dominum et Vivificantem, 1986, which the Pope himself has referred to as the Trinitarian Trilogy. Number 1. From learned professor to reigning pontiff. How many were familiar with the efforts of the scholar Karol Wojtyła towards a major synthesis of scholastic tradition, modern philosophy and theology, of mysticism and a conciliar worldview? How many were familiar with the essays, mostly in Polish, written by the founder of the Lublin-Krakow Ethical School, or with the philosophical, quote, struggle for man, which was carried out there? Through Cardinal Wojtyła's election to the papacy, the personal philosophy and theology of a professor and bishop attains the status of general relevance for the Church as a whole. Even as bishop, Karol Wojtyła continued to exercise his teaching career as a professor. While archbishop, he remained professor, and as professor he was archbishop. This synthesis characterizes the personality of Karol Wojtyła. The philosophical theological interest is not accidental in his case, but essential. Despite the exhausting and time-consuming exercise of his office as bishop, his philosophical theological interests remained the intellectual and spiritual mainspring of his activity. Through Cardinal Wojtyła's election to the papacy, the pontificate of John Paul II is formed by the philosophical, theological, spiritual nucleus of this powerful personality. As Bishop Karol Wojtyła, so Pope John Paul II understands his office and duties in the light of the Council. The main source for his papal writings are the Council documents. Their interpretation depends on the understanding of the Council, as expressed already by the Bishop of Krakow. Then, too, the pastoral efforts of John Paul II follow in the footsteps of Paul VI and are directed towards the implementation of the decisions of the Second Vatican Council, as the Pope himself strongly emphasizes. See below Redemptor Hominis. Like Cardinal Wojtyła, so Pope John Paul II is a man of Vatican II. He is a pope of the conciliar church. It makes a big difference whether a learned professor or the reigning pontiff proclaims his personal philosophy and theology, whether a bishop or the successor of Peter makes his own understanding of the council the norms of his apostolate, whether a bishop or the vicar of Christ organizes an interfaith prayer meeting, whether a diocese or the universal church takes part in the journey towards Assisi. Number 2. Assisi, John Paul II's grand vision of universal religious peace. The interfaith worship of Assisi was no chance event in the pastoral order. It was a major event of dogmatic significance, emanating from the heart of the theology and personality of Karl Wojtyła, and presented before the entire world by Pope John Paul II as the visible expression of the intentions of Vatican II, with the authority of the office of Peter. As a programmatic demonstration of the conciliar pan-ecumenism by the Pope himself, the Assisi event carries dogmatic weight, which marks the course of the Church into the third millennium. Footnote: from the Vatican's standpoint, Assisi means, quote, a breakthrough in the history of mankind, which, quote, penetrates deep into man's consciousness, and which should, quote, usher in the beginning of a new age. Observatore Romano, German edition, November 28, 1986, page 2. End footnote. At the same time, the prayer meeting was a major event of pastoral importance. Assisi is the model which must be faithfully imitated, and according to which the pan-ecumenical objectives of Vatican II should be gradually realized in the Church and in the world. The Pope wished, and still wishes, the prayer service for peace, as practiced there, to be understood as, quote, in anticipation of what God would very much like to see realized through the historical development of mankind, end quote. Assisi was, therefore, not only the initial thrust, the, quote, beginning of a new age, but also by the very fact, the, quote, anticipation of the main objective, the, quote, convergence of all religions. Assisi is the starting point for a pastoral process which, if faithfully imitated, should guide and transform the entire faith and practice of Christianity, as well as the religious awareness of all mankind. This is the pastoral dimension of the international series of prayer meetings in Kyoto, 1987, Rome, 1988, Warsaw, 1989, Bari, 1990, and Malta, 1991, as well as numerous imitations on a lower scale. The pastoral success is remarkable. The, quote, spirit of Assisi has advanced since then to the tiniest country parishes. In Assisi, the Pope presented before all mankind his grand vision of universal religious peace as the intention behind Vatican II.